Hi, this is Lydia Rackham, and welcome to this week's novel writing tutorial. Okay, so today we're going to talk about drafts and editing. Now, the word draft, you've heard of it in your English classes and in your history classes if you have to write papers there. And it was concocted, this concept, by, of course, people who had to write things out by hand or in the typewriter, because you had a physical piece of paper. So if you're typing along and you're just getting your ideas down, well, if you mess up, it's there on the paper. You have a whole paragraph that you don't like, but it's there, and so you have to put an X through a big red X, and then the whole thing looks like all carved up. So you have to type it again and smooth it out and make it beautiful, because the first draft was bleh. This concept, though, now is obsolete. It really is, especially with your long projects like this. Teachers will probably try to hold on to it because they like holding on to things. They're a lot. I ran into this kind of in my master's class, how sources that were in physical books were more credible than a scanned book online. It's just progress. It's just trying to change the system gradually. So the concept of a first draft, a second draft, a third draft is from the typewriter days. Okay, so you don't need to regard that anymore. You will still find this in writing books, writing advice books. Your first draft. Well, no, you don't need to have a first draft anymore. What you need to do is, while you're writing, you edit yourself as you go. Now what you do is you write 3 or 4 paragraphs, then you go back and you read those. This will help keep you in the flow of things. It will also help you realize that you left a word out there, or you don't like the way that phrase is, or you don't even like this whole paragraph, so get rid of it. Because computers aren't a physical piece of paper. So you can do that. You can grab things and move it and rearrange and do all of these things right there as you're writing, instead of a physical piece of paper that you're like, oh, yuck, and you just have to use a great big marker. So the best way to do this is, every time you finish a chapter, go back to the top of the chapter and reread it again. Just get the flow right, make sure that you haven't missed anything or screwed anything up or left there any typos. And then you can keep going. When you sit down to write at your very first time of the day that you're writing, go back and read at least half a page before that you wrote yesterday. My bird. I don't know what's up with her. But yes, you start over a little bit before. I don't just start where you stopped. Start over, get back into the flow of things, get back into your character's mind, into the setting, into the mood, so that you can continue the flow and it doesn't suddenly feel like a sharp change. Just because yesterday you had a bad day and today you're having a better day doesn't mean that the mood of your chapter or the narrative should change. When you finish the novel, when you actually type the end, go out and celebrate, go get yourself an ice cream. Then leave it alone for 3 days, at least 3 days. And then come back and start at the beginning of the book and read it all the way through. And fix things and move things and decide whether or not everything is flowing correctly. And if you have stuck with your outline, at that point, you should have it pretty close to being done. So there's really no such thing as a first draft, a second draft, a third draft. That's ancient history. The way of doing that's old. That's like navigating on a ship by the stars in one of those compassy things. It's old. It worked for them because that's the technology that they had. You don't have to do that anymore. Huzzah! So no matter what your teacher says, you don't have to do 5 drafts. You don't. We're not going to do it this time, but we'll talk about it later, about an editor, as in someone besides you screwing around with your words. and the pros and cons and who exactly that should be. So, if anyone, that's another common misconception, that you have to have an editor. We'll talk about that later. Edit as you go. Keep rereading things and stay in the flow of stuff. And by the time that you hit the end, it should be close, if not all the way, to a finished project. I always say project. A finished product. So tune in next time and we'll talk about short stories. I'm excited about that one. That's an interesting one. Short stories, and then we'll talk about who you should let read this thing. So, see you next week.